Okay, cool. So I hope you got your mats and everything ready and you've got a couple of blocks handy and perhaps a strap. We'll start off in a seated position, sitting cross-legged, feet flexed, and we'll be flexing the feet so that the back foot supports the front foot's calf and shin. The outside edges of the feet are down on the floor and the bottom edges of the feet are kind of pointing outward. You know, draw the flesh out from underneath your buttocks, come and sit nice and tall on the sitting bones. The spine upright, shoulders drawing back and down, flattening the shoulder blades to the back and placing your hands onto the floor next to your hips. So you can push into the fingertips, rolling the arms back into their sockets, broadening across the chest, and then lifting the sternum up, pull those bottom ribs back and in slightly, and root the buttocks down, feeling that subtle engagement of the abdominal muscles as you do that. Move your head from side to side to make sure the neck is loose and relaxed. Pull the face back slightly to sort of align the back of the head with the tailbone, and then release one hand at a time onto the knees, bending the elbows slightly to broaden across the chest. So try to feel that balance between being alert and relaxed. So the upright spine makes us alert. We use the inhale breath to emphasize that, and then exhale, releasing tension through the body. So just allowing the body to soften down, skin and muscles of the back to soften down, while still being supported by the skeletal structure. Okay, so the eyes are closed, just noticing whatever it is that you notice. Sounds in the room, physical sensations in the body, thoughts in the mind. Just check and see if you have a tendency to want to change anything that kind of doesn't feel right or isn't totally conducive to your yoga practice. Maybe you're feeling a little bit agitated, or there's some distractions where you are. Can you just notice your reaction to those things and just try to open up to whatever experience is taking place instead of deciding what experience should or shouldn't be happening? All right, then we'll open up our class with a chanting of 3 Oms. So we're going to bring our hands in prayer position in front of the heart, resting the thumbs onto the sternum and drawing the rest of the fingers slightly away, broadening across the chest with the shoulder blades flat to the back. We're lifting the sternum subtly to the thumbs as the thumbs rest down on the sternum. And keeping the legs relaxed, the eyes soft and relaxed, drawn back away from the eyelids, the jaw relaxed, the throat relaxed. Take a deep inhale, exhale breath to empty the lungs completely. Inhale. Inhale to lengthen the crown up toward the ceiling. Exhale, bow the head to the heart while keeping the spine long. Release the hands down to the thighs with the palms facing up. Inhale, raise the head up, and exhale, open the eyes. Cool. All right. So we'll come on to all fours and just do our preliminary stretches. I'm going to take the knees wide to the edges of the mat, toes touching, and sitting back onto the heels. Then extending the arms forward, remember going to about 95% of your maximum length so that you can still get a bit of nuance into the action of the shoulders. So we want to draw those shoulder blades back away from the ears. We want to turn the inner elbows up, grounding into that space between the index finger and the thumb to flatten the hands down, lengthening the body forward, and then bringing the forehead down onto the floor. So the undercarriage of the body is extending forward along the floor, along the mat. There's a subtle movement, in fact, at the on the forehead. The skin should feel like it's moving from the hairline to the eyebrow ridge as you sort of gently slide the head forward along the floor. We want to descend those armpits down to open up into the armpits, but push down into the hands to lift the forearms up off the floor. So that rolling of the arms out should create a bit of space between the neck and the upper arms and the deltoids. So the bicep that's closest to the ears, that's rolling up, and the tricep on the outside of the arm is cutting down. And we're drawing the outside edge of the arm in behind the armpit, kind of pulling it in there. And feel as you pull the arm back into the socket that pulls the body forward, the underneath of the body forward. Shoulders away from the ears. And then subtle engagement to the belly as well. So we don't want to just dump through. If you have more flexibility in your lower back, you don't want to just kind of fall through your body. You want to pull your bottom ribs in slightly, pull the belly in, and feel that you are elongating or extending the middle of the back toward the tailbone to kind of lengthen backward a little bit. So there's a subtle engagement of that abdomen so that we're not just falling through, nor are we kind of dumping down. Arms are awake and the shoulders should be warmed up by now. And you want to have a little bit of contact between those bottom ribs and the inner thighs so that we don't have our legs too wide nor too narrow. Some space for the belly to be able to draw down, but not so much that you're kind of falling through the legs. And then we're going to inhale, come forward, come up onto all fours, and we're going to take our knees to hip width apart, our feet to hip width apart, have our face in line with our hands. We're going to curl the toes underneath, lift the knees up off the floor, keeping the knees bent. We'll move into Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog. So with the knees bent, push into the hands and draw the hips back. Draw the side body and the hips back, and take your chest towards your thighs, nipples towards the knees, keeping the arms straight and strong, still keeping the neck relatively loose. So we're not working into the neck muscles. We're trying to keep the arms away from the neck muscles. And then pushing strongly into the hands, we're going to exhale and straighten those legs and take the heels down towards the floor. So we're working with a nice, strong, straight arm, elbows locked out, and the legs as well as straight as possible. If you've got very tight backs of the legs, then you can always take your feet a little bit wider than hip distance apart, but try and get the feet to be parallel to the outside edges of the mat. So that might entail you pigeon-toeing your toes slightly if you take your legs a little bit wider than hip distance apart. Keep pushing into the hands, lifting the backs of the legs up. We can emphasize that lifting of the back of the legs up by coming up onto the toes, sharpening the buttocks up toward the ceiling, and then exhale, dragging the heels down towards the floor. So bottom ribs drawn in, armpits open, and head hanging loose. Strong into the hands, flattening the hands down, pushing into the heel of the hand helps to take the side body back a little bit more, and pushing into the fingertips helps to activate into the forearms a little bit more. Okay, and then we're going to walk our hands forward, coming into walk our feet forward to our hands, should I say, coming into a forward fold. So standing in the middle of the mat, outside edges of the feet are still parallel. Your feet can still be a bit wider. If you can get them to be hip width apart, that's great. Taking your hands to your shins if need be, or even to the thighs to push yourself away from your legs. If you're able to keep your fingers on the floor, that's good. And we want to just extend our body forward, lengthening the body forward to try and get this dorsal spine to sink in a little bit more. So rolling those shoulders away from the ears, pull up strongly through the kneecaps, lifting the skin of the back of the legs up as we teeter forward, and then looking slightly ahead of you, extend the sternum forward and allow yourself to come forward and down, grabbing onto opposite elbows, if that helps you to hang further forward and down, or if it's not too much strain, just taking your hands back next to the feet, fingertips in line with the tips of the toes, and taking the elbows out to the side. So into a full Uttanasana. Strong action in the front of the legs helps to loosen and extend the muscles and skin at the back of the legs, and shifting your weight slightly forward to the toes helps to emphasize that kind of teetering action that enables you to lift the back of the legs up a little bit more rather than dumping into the heels. Make sure the head is loose and relaxed, but that the shoulders are drawing slightly away from the ears, extending the body forward. If it's all about the hamstrings and you're not getting any access to the lower back, bend the knees slightly, get the bottom ribs or the belly to touch against the thighs, keep that connection, and then straighten the legs as best as you can. Okay. And then if you're holding onto your elbows, release your hands down to the floor, bend the knees, take the hands to the thighs, push yourself away from your legs, coming all the way up into a standing posture, and just shaking it out. Cool. All right. So we'll work into standing postures now, open hip standing postures, Trikonasana and Virabhadrasana 2, and then an extended side angle Parsvakonasana. All right, so standing in the middle of your mat, middle of your mat with the feet together, just establishing yourself in your Tadasana mountain pose. Have the ball mounds of the big toes touching, heels and ankles touching, pulling up through the kneecaps. Remember, the idea here is to not puff out the chest. We want to lift the side body up without puffing out the chest too much. So if we focus on lifting the side body, that tends to balance out the front and back. If we just focus on lifting the sternum, then we tend to want to arch into the back a little bit here. So thinking about lifting the whole side body up, pulling the buttocks forward, moving the buttocks forward to engage the abdomen slightly and elongate the tailbone, and then rolling the arms back, shoulder blades flat to the back, and broadening across the chest. Okay, so we'll start with the open hip standing postures. So moving from Trikonasana into Virabhadrasana 2, and then extended side angle Parsvakonasana. So standing in Tadasana first, we want to ground into the ball mounds of the big toes all the way to the ball mounds of the little toes. Big toes, toe mounds, heels and ankles touching. Outside edge of the foot is also rooted down. And that horseshoe shape at the back of the heel is rooted down, and we're lifting the inside edge of the arch of the foot up. Kneecaps awake, thighs on line. We're drawing that tailbone down and lifting the sternum up. And as I was saying before, trying to lift the whole side body up so that it doesn't become a question of just puffing the chest out. We want to draw those bottom ribs in, keep the abdomen on line. That subtly pulls the front part of the pubic plate up and lengthens the tailbone down. Once you've got all of this in place, you can also draw your face back a little bit so it doesn't feel like you are extending too far forward, but rather kind of balancing the back of the head over the tailbone and the heels. All right, taking your hands to the chest, we're going to bend the knees and hop the feet nice and wide apart. And ultimately, you want to set yourself up so that your feet, your heels are as wide as your wrists. In time, you can get to that, but that's kind of what we're aiming for. We're going to turn the right toes out, always checking to make sure that that right foot heel has got a imaginary bisecting line coming from that heel and cutting the back foot in half. Arms awake, nice and straight and strong, and arms slightly above shoulder height. So we're getting this lifting into the side body, but not a lifting into the shoulders. So we want to draw the shoulder blades back and down while lifting the side body up into the armpit, extending into the fingertips. Those inner elbows are turned upwards, so you can turn the palms of your hands over to get that rotation from the shoulder into the arm, and then turn the palms down. Lifting up through the kneecaps, take a deep inhale, extending out towards the right, and then taking the right hand down to the left shin. So trying to line yourself up as best as you can to maintain in a horizontal plane along the midline of the body, I suppose. the midline of your mat. So don't worry about how far down you go. Make sure that you can still prevent this top shoulder from rolling forward and the top hip from rolling forward. You want to keep drawing that hip back, pushing into the outside edge of the back foot to externally rotate from the outside edge of the back foot all the way into the back leg, and then that will start to turn the bottom edge of the torso, and you can push slightly against your bottom hand to turn those bottom ribs forward toward the belly button, and then turn the belly button over toward the top ribs. So we're getting the spiraling action into the torso, and then rolling your arms out again if they've rolled inward, so that we create space between the head and the upper arms, the neck and the upper arms, reaching the top arm up, grounding the bottom hand down, light in the bottom hand, however, both kneecaps straight and strong, and you look up at your top hand only if it doesn't hurt your neck. So you would gaze up at the top thumb with the bottom eye. Keep on breathing here, feeling the extension into the side body and making sure that it's not overtly stretched on the top edge of the body. So inhale into these top ribs if you can, and exhale, soften them into the body slightly. All right. So just making sure you're keeping as much awakeness, aliveness, intelligence, as they call it, in the entire body, and then push into the outside edge of the back foot to take an inhale and come all the way up. All right, we're going to turn the right toes in, turning the left toes out, and we'll go to Trikonasana, triangle pose on the other side. So pulling the kneecaps up, lengthening the side body up out of the waist into the armpit, arms slightly higher than shoulder width, extending out towards the left and taking the left hand down to the left shin. Same thing here, pushing into the outside edge of that back foot, externally rotating the whole leg, moving the left buttock forward. As we roll the hip open, we roll the torso open and reach that top arm up toward the ceiling. Check and make sure that the shoulders aren't creeping into the ears. So we turn the inner elbows of both arms to point towards the top of the head and roll the shoulder blades back as a result. And then turn your head to look up at your top hand with your bottom eye, provided it doesn't hurt the neck. So one of the ways we can stop strain coming into the neck is by lifting the sternum slightly, still pulling the belly in and lengthening the tailbone, so we're not arching into our back, but just lifting the sternum to release a little bit of tension in the neck so we can turn our head to look up at the top hand. Then push into the outside edge of the back foot a little bit more dynamically as we inhale, come all the way up, turning the toes in again, and then turning the right toes out. Bisecting line once more, just checking to make sure that your arms are the same height, and then push into the outside edge of the back foot. You can go a little bit wider. I like to go a little bit wider in Virabhadrasana 2 than I do in Trikonasana, so I can really get a good 90-degree angle on that front knee. So as you exhale, bend the front knee, try and feel that you're keeping a little bit of weight back into your left leg. So keeping the torso directly over the hips, not leaning forward, but drawing back slightly, and using that drawing back action to remind yourself to push into the outside edge of the back foot, lifting that inner arch up slightly, but still rooting the ball mound and the big toe and inner heel on the back foot down. Bending that front knee to a 90-degree angle if possible, and looking through the middle finger of your front hand. We pull the belly in slightly, we draw the tailbone down, keep the shoulders relatively relaxed, and an active lifting of the skin underneath the arms so that it doesn't hang down on the arms. We get a good solid lengthening and extension, but also a lift into the arm bones. And then to come out, we just inhale, straighten that front leg up, turning the toes in, turning the toes out. If you need to rest your arms down on your hips, that's totally fine. Otherwise, keeping the arms lifted and awake, we pull up through the kneecaps, take a deep inhale, and exhale, bend the front knee. So coming to your 90-degree angle again, remember that you can always adjust your position when you come in. If you feel like your feet are too close, you don't have to commit to the positioning of your feet. You can always make adjustments as you go, depending on kind of how you first arrive in the posture. So that front knee, we wanted to have it directly over the front ankle, arms nice and straight and strong, lifting up through the side body, looking through the middle finger of your front hand. You can roll the inner elbows up by drawing the shoulders, the back down behind you, keeping straight and strong in the arms, straight and strong in that back leg, inside and outside edge of the back foot rooting down while the inner arch lifts up. And the front knee has a tendency to want to drift towards the big toe side, so move it towards the baby toe side of the foot. Take an inhale, exhale, see if you can bend the front knee a little bit more without lunging or hinging the torso over towards the left. And then inhale, straighten the front leg up, turning the toes in, taking your hands to your chest and hopping the feet together, shaking it out a little bit. Now we can use a block if you need to. So we're going to work into our extended side angle pose, and we can put a block on either side of the back edge of the mat in order to provide a little bit of support as need be when we move into this posture. So starting off in Tadasana, mountain pose again, you can turn the arms outward to get that openness across the chest, and then just turn the palms in independently, so we get that stretching of the skin across the collarbones, the plugging of the arms into the sockets. And then we wake up the legs by pushing them into the floor and pulling them up from the kneecaps at the same time. So the back of the leg is long to the heel, and the front of the leg is kind of contracted up toward the hips. Then we're going to take our hands to our chest, bend the knees and hop the feet wide apart on a nice inhale. And we want to go relatively wide now into this extended side angle pose. We want to have quite a bit of room to extend and lengthen. So going as wide as you're able to, and the gauge here is that you should feel that there's some kind of stretch happening in the legs, but not so wide that you feel like you have no more control, that you don't have any strength to be able to pull up through the legs and stabilize. Extending the arms out, we're going to turn the right toes out. We're going to push into the outside edge of that back foot. Take a deep inhale, and then exhale, bend the front knee. We combine this extension of Trikonasana by lengthening to the right, and we take the right hand down onto a block on the outside edge of the foot. For now, we can keep the back hand resting on the back hip. So get a good strong grounding into the outside edge of that back foot, turning the body open toward the ceiling by pushing into your block. Now, traditionally, we have a couple of different positions of the hand on the front. Sometimes it helps to have the hand on the inside, and we can push the arm and the leg against each other to prevent the leg from drifting in, and to help to push and open the arm forward to open up the body. So that's a little bit of an easier way to get that rotation into the torso. The more kind of advanced variation would be to have the hand on the outside of the knee, so we have to work actively to draw that knee out to the side and kind of glue the arm and the leg together. And then as you're able to, you can turn that block down a little bit more. So once you've gotten to whatever level you can go to with your block and where you're positioning your hand, turn the torso open toward the ceiling. Draw that top arm's elbow and shoulder back, flattening them to the back. And then we're going to inhale, raise the arm up, top arm up, turn the palm over the head, but turning from the whole arm from the shoulder to make space. And then exhale, extend that top arm over the top ear. So while you're extending and lengthening, you're still trying to turn the body open toward the ceiling. And that really comes from a strong activation into that back leg to help you roll and open that hip toward the ceiling and move your right buttock forward. Reach into the fingernails, feel the connection between the fingernails and the outside edge of that back foot. Exhale, sink a little bit more. And then on an inhale, we push into the outside edge of the back foot. Take an inhale, come all the way up, and we turn the toes in again. We'll just take a breather. It's quite a strong pose. It does heat the body up quite a lot. So just take a breath or two here, catching your breath, and then we'll turn the left toes out. So take time to position the body properly before you go into the posture, to position the legs and everything else, so that you don't have to worry about that alignment once you go into the posture. So bisecting line, cutting that back foot in half, shoulders already squared, hips already squared. We inhale, raise the arms up, take a deep inhale, exhale, bend that front knee. Then we extend over as though we're going into Trikonasana, and we release our hand down onto the block, taking the back top hand up onto the hip. So we can just choose the positioning of that front arm and leg. So remember your options here. You can take the hand on the inside of the leg on the block to push the arm and the leg together and turn the body open. Sometimes it's nice to just do that initially to get that opening across the chest and the spiraling of the body. And then once you've got that opening, you can take the block back or keep the block on the inside edge of the knee, bending a little bit more. We're going to really glue the arm and the leg together here, and then turn the body open toward the ceiling, drawing that shoulder back, drawing that elbow back to get that rotation. Strong activity in the back leg really helps here. So with all your sort of available strength, push into the outside edge of that back foot to roll the body open. You can dial this block down as need be, and then reach the top arm up, turn from the shoulder, from the arm, and exhale, take the arm over the head. So you want to eventually look up toward the ceiling underneath that armpit, and that encourages us to turn the body open. But as you strive to turn the body open, you have to make sure that this front knee doesn't fall in. So keep the arm and the knee glued together and turn the body open almost independently of the legs and the hips. Grounding into the outside edge of the back foot, feel the relationship between the back heel and the top fingertips, lengthening out of the waist. Really feeling that strong stretch into the side body, breathing the whole time. And then pushing into the outside edge of the back foot, take a deep inhale, coming all the way up, turning the toes in, hands to the chest, and hop the feet together. Shaking it out, and just taking Uttanasana, forward fold to recover. So holding onto opposite elbows, changing the grip, just to mix it up every now and again. Arms up next to the ears, biceps in line with the ears, lengthening out of the waist, extending forward and down, and just letting the body hang. So the legs don't have to be super straight here. We're just allowing a release into the body, a release and softening into the legs, and a hanging action that can release tension in the side body as well. All right, so just continue to breathe. So I'm going to put this on mute. Okay. All right, so we're going to release the hands now down to the floor. Bend the knees, take our hands to our thighs and push ourselves away from our legs, coming all the way up into a standing posture again. And just shake it out. So we'll work on doing some Ardha Mukha Svanasana with one leg at a time. So coming into your downward facing dog, having your just moving your blocks out of the way, coming onto all fours, make sure the hands are shoulder width apart or even a little bit wider, and you can do that action of screwing the hands into the floor. So imagine you kind of turning the hands out like you're trying to unscrew a jar or screw a jar, depending on which hand you're using. So we externally rotate both hands, plug those arm bones into the sockets, and then the knees and feet can be a little bit further back. So just to get a good length, we stack the joints of the arms on top of each other and then come into our flat plank position. And then from there you can exhale, push back, lifting the hips up, lengthening the side body, getting a nice opening through the armpit and the side body as we push strongly into the arms. Then we're going to toe heel the feet, or just bring the feet together so we get the ball mounds of the big toes at least to touch. Feeling that we've still got a lifting through the backs of the legs, extension through the side body. We're going to shift our weight into our left leg and bring our right leg up and extend it up as high as we can get it into that single leg dog pose. So just finding that 90-degree angle as best as we can, torso relative to the grounded leg, the left leg, and striving upward with that right leg, but making sure we're not flaring the right hip out to the side. We want to keep our hips squared to the floor, shoulders squared to the floor, and then flex and point into that back leg to lift and get a little bit higher. And then we'll exhale, release the leg down. We can bring our knees to the floor and just take a breath or two here. And then we'll go into that again. So once again, screwing the hands into the floor, lifting the knees up, and then grounding into the right leg, lifting the left leg nice and high, and screwing that left leg into place squaring the hips off, really rooting that right heel down and lifting the left leg up as high as you can without letting the hips flare out to the side. So striving to get an opening into the leg without looking for that compensatory action by throwing the hips out of alignment and opening the armpits up as we strive up with that top leg. And then exhale, release the foot down, release the knees to the floor, and we can just take a little breather, knees wide, toes touching, and we sit back onto the heels, extending the arms forward, releasing the elbows to the floor, and you can bring both hands underneath your forehead, or you can just rest down with your forehead to the floor and your elbows on the floor. So just notice the breathing. Notice the transition of the body from kind of being out of breath and then slowly coming back down. A lot of this work is quite strong and strenuous, and especially when we work into the legs, we really kind of put the cardiovascular system under a little bit of extra strain. So just notice that. Notice any sort of aversion, I guess, that you might have to doing some of these more challenging postures. And then we're going to practice our Virabhadrasana 3 with our hands on some blocks. So if you don't have any blocks, you can use a regular chair, anything that's more or less the same sort of same position as the blocks are. And what we'll do is we'll step towards the back of the mat. So if you're going to use a chair, you would place a chair on the opposite side of the mat there. We're stepping towards the back of the mat with blocks in hand. And we're going to turn the left toes out slightly, step the right foot forward, coming into a squared hip and shoulder position. Then we'll inhale, raise the arms up, extending forward and down, and bringing the hands down on either side of the front foot. So first, we want to just practice squaring the hips off and keeping the body long. So we want to push strongly with the back heel away from us. This back leg, we're hitting the thigh onto the thigh muscle onto the bone. We're pulling the front leg's hip slightly backward and the back leg's hip slightly forward. Hands can rest on the block. And we also want to always look for that squaring of the hips. So we're squaring to the front and back and squaring up and down. So squaring to front and back is that pulling the front leg's hip back and the back leg's hip forward. And then squaring up and down generally is taking the front leg's buttock and lifting it up slightly, and taking the back leg's buttock and almost wrapping it around the outside of the hip. And you can place your right hand onto your sacrum to check and see if that sacrum is relatively flat. Kneecaps pulled up straight and strong. Once you've got a good stabilized leg position, you can place your hands back onto the blocks. Think about extending your body forward to get that dorsal spine to sink in. And as you're able to, you can slowly begin to turn the blocks down to get more and more sort of a deeper stretch. But strive to keep this front body open, really not letting the spine round too much. You can always find neutral back of the head and neck, but still keep lifting the sternum as though you're looking slightly ahead of you. Kneecaps awake, and especially on that back leg, we're really kind of sliding that back leg away from us, almost like we're trying to slide the heel away from us off the floor. That's going to give us that activation into the back leg that we're going to need just now. Then we'll transition from here into our full Warrior 3. So you can turn your blocks up and bend the front knee. We're going to take our blocks one kind of torso or arm's length forward, and we're going to hop into our front leg and lift that back leg up just until we can get it to be at a 90-degree angle, like we did in our previous posture with that single leg downward facing dog. So we're grounding into the hands, we're lifting that back leg up straight and strong, flattening the back as best as we can, and rolling those inner elbows forward to engage these muscles on the side body and keep openness across the chest and not let the shoulders creep into the neck. And then really drive into that back heel and think about that feeling of trying to slide your back foot away from you along the mat, and feel how that activates into your lifted legs thigh a little bit, and works the standing legs hips a little bit more, the stronger you lift the leg up, make sure that you also square it off, and that's what really stretches and opens the muscles on the outside of your standing leg. All right, take another deep inhale, lengthen, extend back, bend the front knee. You can step back, place your blocks on either side of the front foot, straighten the front leg to come back into our Parsvottanasana, and then we step forward and stand up and just shake it out. Okay, so strong, quite strong work on the legs. We'll do the same thing now on the other side with the other leg. So stepping towards the back of the mat, you can leave your blocks where they are, or you can bring them back with you into your hands. We're going to turn the right toes out and step the left foot forward, squaring off the hips once more. Okay, so once the hips are squared, you want to try and keep them square, keep the shoulders square as you come down. So just put your mind into your hips and try and notice them, try and keep them stable with a little bit of abdominal engagement and a little bit of a kind of squeezing of the thighs towards the midline. Inhale, raising the arms up, extend forward and down, and bring your hands down onto the blocks. Think about extending the body forward, drawing the dorsal spine in, pulling the kneecaps up, and starting to square the hips off. So remember those cues of drawing the front leg's hip back, the back leg's hip slightly forward, the front leg's buttock we lift up slightly, the back leg's buttock we wrap around the hip, and you can take your left hand now to your sacrum and see if your sacrum is squared off. If and when it is, you activate those legs strongly, particularly that back leg, really trying to slide it away from you along the mat, while at the same time pulling the hip forward, and then pushing into the blocks actively to roll those shoulders back, turn the inner elbows forward, extending the torso to flatten that dorsal spine in, and then as need be, you can slowly dial the blocks down, 1, 2, 3, to whichever setting works better for you. Remember, as useful as it is to look forward and extend the dorsal spine, the sternum forward, we want to still find neutral back of the neck at some point. Back of the neck neutral to the rest of the spine. So lengthening out of the waist as we pull the hips to square at the same time. Okay. And then we'll bend the front knee. We'll dial our blocks up again. We take them one arm's length forward. We transition into our Virabhadrasana 3 with the blocks. So we shift our weight forward into our front leg, standing up nice and tall, and then pull that back leg, the lifted leg, pull the hip back to square. If you're able to, you can even lift your left hand off and check that sacrum again, and then pull the kneecap of the standing leg up as you push the heel into the floor, drive into the back leg's heel, point the back leg's toe and knee down at the floor, and think about getting those shoulders away from the ears as you pull the sternum forward. So strong action in the legs. Remember that activity of trying to slide the back leg away from you. You're still activating that to get action into the thighs. Deep inhale, lengthen, and then exhale. We bend the front leg, step back, take your blocks back on either side of your front foot, standing up and stepping forward to come out. Okay, cool. So we've got the action that we need now to go into full Warrior 3, and we'll try it without the blocks, and it's a little bit more of an active movement. So if you need to, you can keep the blocks handy and you can still carry on working with the chair, but let's try and see if we're able to do it without using the blocks. So we'll stand towards the back of the mat again. We're going to turn the left toes out. I'm going to step that right foot forward, make sure we get a good squaring off distance, got a bit of space behind us, and we want to transition in through our Warrior 1. So we're going to extend the arms up, shoulders away from the ears, lengthening up out of the waist. Exhale, bend that front leg, coming into your Virabhadrasana 1. Pull the belly in slightly, feel the activation into the back leg before we go in. Tilt the body forward, over your front thigh, shift the weight into the front leg, lift the back leg up, and when you get your balance, really drive into that back leg's heel to extend the leg back, pull the hips to square, reach into your hands, shoulders away from the ears, and then lift both arms and back leg up as you push into the standing legs, heel a bit more, pulling that kneecap and that thigh muscle up towards the hip. Okay, so we strive, we lengthen out of the waist, we lift, 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 and then come out the same way we went in. We bend that back, that front knee, take the back leg further back. Inhale up into Virabhadrasana 1. Exhale, straighten the front leg, releasing the hands to the waist, and stepping forward to shake it out. Good work. Okay, so not to be scoffed at. Virabhadrasana 3, nice, strong, workable posture, working posture. Give you a little bit of leg strength for sure. Okay, so we'll do the other side now, turning the right toes out, stepping the left foot forward, squaring the hips off, hips and shoulders off towards that front edge of the mat. Warrior 1 first. So we inhale, raise the arms up, the palms are facing towards each other, shoulders away from the ears. Inhale, lengthen out of the waist. Exhale, bend that front knee, keeping the hips and shoulders squared. We tilt over the front thigh, shifting our weight towards our front leg. Inhale, lengthen forward, and drive back at the same time. So once you get your balance, that's when you have to start trying to square the hips off, reaching into the fingertips, driving into that back heel, pulling the kneecaps up, shoulders away from the ears, palms facing towards each other, striving forward with the sternum, but looking straight down at the floor. And then to come out, we bend the front knee, we step back, stand up, releasing the hands to the hips, and we can step back and shake it out. Cool. Okay, so we'll come into Virasana now, just to allow the legs to recuperate. So you can come onto 1 or 2 blocks, and we're going to bring the knees together and the feet wide apart. Keep your belt handy, we'll do some shoulder opening stuff. So taking the hands behind the knees, we're going to draw the skin out from behind the knees, flattening the calf muscles down, and then sitting down onto that block and drawing the skin and muscles out. Sitting onto the block in such a way so that we can still slide our hands down here next to the hips, between the heels and the hips, should I say. So we'll eventually be able to sit on the floor between the feet. And once you've got this position in place, we want to just compensate. Most of the time, a lot of people's inner thighs will roll in. So we want to compensate for that inward rolling of the thigh. We take our hands next to us. We lift ourselves off the block. We squeeze the thighs in towards the midline. We draw the buttocks back while still squeezing the thighs in towards the midline. And then we sit back down. So we've got that lift, but we've still got a lengthening of the back of the leg, and we rooted quite solidly down onto those sitting bones. Okay, cool. We're going to take our belt out now, and we'll take the belt over the right shoulder. Reaching the right arm up, we'll turn the palm in and grab onto the belt. Then we're going to turn the left arm out, turning the thumb down and reaching the hand back behind us and clasping onto the belt there. So getting a good grip behind you. Strive up with that right elbow up toward the ceiling, but try and take the right bicep slightly backward. And we don't want to pull the arm over so much that it starts to push the head forward. We want to keep the sternum lifted and come into this sort of position so we're getting opening into the armpit without compromising the neck. So strive up with that right elbow, draw the left elbow and shoulder blade back, broadening across the chest. Root the buttocks down, pull those bottom ribs in, and lengthen up out of the waist. Keep on breathing. Okay, so make sure that there's something happening while you're breathing. So there's a lengthening up of the elbow up toward the ceiling on the inhale breath, and exhale, you can draw those shoulders away from the ears a little bit more. Cool. And then we're going to release out, and we'll take the belt over onto the other shoulder. So working into the left arm now. We're going to take the left arm up. Oh, one sec. So we will do the left arm now. Okay, so striving up with the left arm, taking that belt over the left shoulder. We're striving up with the left arm, taking the left arm back behind us, and clasping the belt in such a way so that the arm doesn't have to creep around behind the head. So that your hand should basically be resting between the shoulder blades, but we want to still keep our elbow out, shoulder width apart. So taking the right arm out, we flip the palm over, reach back behind us, clasping the belt, walking the hands towards one another, and once you get a good solid grip, then you can start to make some more adjustments. So we strive up a little bit more with that left elbow, pull the left shoulder blade down, pull the right arm bone back, and pull those bottom ribs in slightly, lengthening the tailbone down into the block, or the lower back down to the block by pushing the block down, the buttocks down into the block, should I say, and lifting the inside edges of the thighs up. So lengthening up with that armpit all the way to the elbow, but taking the back part of the shoulder blade of the left arm down. And use the breath to help you emphasize this. So inhale to lengthen, exhale to soften or draw down. Good opening into the shoulders, body nice and warm, and keeping some activity in those legs. So squeezing the thighs in towards the midline, still pushing the tops of the feet down onto the floor, and sitting as high or as low as works for you. Make sure you're not hurting the legs. All right, and then we're going to release, lifting up and coming down, and we'll work into our Supta Virasana as best as we can. So I'm just going to turn sideways here. We're still sitting in Virasana. You can also turn sideways if you like, but once you do turn sideways, make sure you don't sort of strain your neck looking to the side to see what's happening. So maybe adjust where your computer is, and you can come to sit back in Virasana again, a little bit of activity in the legs. Now if you're sitting on the block, you don't want to go beyond kind of putting your elbows onto the floor. If you're able to take the block out and sit down on the floor between your feet, then you can go a lot kind of deeper into the pose. So then remember, the knees are together, the feet are wide enough apart so that we can come down between the feet. And we'll walk our hands back slightly, just incrementally coming deeper and deeper into this pose. So first we just walk a bit further back. The intent here is to prevent ourselves from dumping into that lower back, so we have to keep on making subtle adjustments by lifting the hips up, tucking the tailbone, and then bringing the buttocks back down again. Then we go a little bit deeper, maybe coming down onto the elbows. Remember, if you're on a block, you don't want to go beyond this point. We lift the hips up, we tuck the tailbone, and we lower the buttocks back down. Then we walk our hands a little bit further out. We lower ourselves all the way down to the floor if you're able to. Once again, pushing into the elbows, you can lift the hips, tuck the tailbone slightly, and lower back down. If you're able to come all the way down onto the floor, then you grab onto opposite elbows and take the arms up over the head. But you need to work a little bit into the abdomen to prevent that lower back from shooting up off the floor and not kind of dumping into your lower back. A lot of strain is going to be happening in the thigh muscles, a lot of stretching and opening there. But if your thigh muscles are very tight and strong, the default position is going to cause this to shorten and cause your lower back to contract and come in. So if you're starting to feel discomfort in your lower back, then rather come out a little bit. We can stay here for a few more breaths. So Opening up those armpits, drawing the shoulder blades back and down also helps to get space into the shoulders. Wherever you are, continue to breathe. Try not to tighten the body in resistance to the posture. So the breath helps us to sort of take attention to where we're feeling discomfort. And then as we exhale, we let go of kind of unnecessary resistance that might be hardening up or tightening up that discomfort in the body. Okay. To come out, we take our hands back down next to the side body. We push into our elbows, slowly start to lift ourselves up into a seated posture, and then walking our hands up to the point where we can come up into a kneeling position again. We'll transition out of this slowly, so there's a lot of pressure that's been exerted on the backs of the legs. So we'll come onto all fours, and just gently, one leg at a time, we'll extend and lengthen the leg out. So just going into a passive extension first. Once you feel at the back of the knees feeling a little bit more open, then you can do a bit more of an active extension, so really driving into that back heel, lengthening through the back of the leg to the heel, pulling that thigh muscle up, and having the eye line in line with the tips of the fingers. Then we can release that knee down. We go the other side, so a passive stretch first, just straightening out the leg without too much activity, just letting the blood flow back into the back of the knee. Another deep inhale, and then as you exhale, you can activate and straighten to that leg nice and strongly. So reaching into the back heel, pulling the kneecaps up, and making sure that we are stretching and opening and allowing blood to flow back into the back of the knee. Okay, then we'll release the knee down to the floor, and we're going to practice our headstand preparatory pose. So really what we want to do is we want to interlace the fingers all the way to the webbing. So the palms of the hands not touching, but we're strongly interlacing those index fingers to the webbing. The thumbs can touch, either one thumb on top of the other, or just slightly interlaced, or just touching. All right, so we want to feel a good, strong engagement there. And then the elbows are going to be shoulder width apart, so that we practice with the same positioning of the hand that we have when we go into our headstand eventually. So the elbows shoulder width apart, knees and feet to hip distance apart. We let the head hang completely loose and relaxed, drawing the shoulders away from the ears, and we're going to curl the toes underneath, pushing into the elbows, lift the knees up off the floor. And you can continue to push into the elbows to kind of move the armpits towards the toes and lift the shoulders away from the ears, but let the head hang loose. So try and take the majority of the weight of the posture into the shoulder blades. Allow them to slide up the back, and keep your head hanging nice and loose and relaxed. Kneecaps awake, and legs lifting up, the skin of the back of the legs lifting up toward the buttocks. Then we walk into our counter pose by taking the feet back and coming into a flat plank position. So really flattening the body as best as you can. Make sure the bum is not too high. Driving into the heels, taking the weight into the shoulders in a different way now. So still hands interlaced, palms separated, neutral back of the neck, abdomen scooped in and engaged strongly, working strongly into the legs. Then we let the head hang loose again. We walk the feet a bit closer towards the face, and pushing into the elbows, we open up the armpits and take the weight into the shoulder blades again, letting the head hang loose, knees awake, back of the skin of the legs lifting up, pushing strongly into the elbows, but no strain in the neck. Shake the head, yes, no, maybe, to make sure it's nice and loose and relaxed. Walking back again now into our second round of that counter pose, that plank pose that develops the abdominal strength that we'll need to stay nice and straight and rigid when we do eventually go into our headstand. So try not to fall through your shoulder blades or push too much. Find a neutral position and use the muscles on the side body to hold the arm bones into their sockets, almost like you're trying to pull the skin at the back of the armpit slightly in. Then we push into the elbows. Once more, last round. Walk the feet in towards the face, shoulders away from the ears, straight and strong in the legs, lifting the skin of the legs back and up, letting the head hang loose, pushing strongly into the armpits, into the elbows to keep on opening the armpit up so that we can take most of the weight into the shoulder blades as we align the upper arm with the side body as best as possible. And then last round of our plank, walking back into a flat plank position, tucking the tailbone, scooping the belly out, driving into the heels, looking straight down at the floor, making sure those elbows are shoulder width apart. Hold for another 3 breaths. Inhale, exhale 1, inhale, exhale 2, deep inhale, and exhale 3. You can bring your knees to the floor, bring the knees together, feet together, let the body rest down onto the thighs, and let the head come down to the floor with the arms alongside the body. So if you can't get your head to the floor and relax, you can always make a stack of fists to put your head on the fists. It's very nice and kind of relaxing for the neck to be stacked in this, for the head to be resting in this way. But also, if you can allow the forehead down to the floor, you get a nice kind of rounding across that upper back as you let the arms hang down along the side body. Just let the breath return to normal. And then coming up into a seated position, taking your hands underneath your shoulders, push yourself up into a kneeling position. And we'll work into, now that our thighs are nice and open, we can come into Kranchasana. So sitting on a block and making sure you have a belt handy. You can sit on a block or two, of course. We will start with both of our legs bent onto the block. Then we slide the block over until it's underneath the left buttock. We take the right foot and we pull it next to us and we tuck it next to the body, so we come into a kind of Virasana leg with the right leg, and that left foot can go into a belt. Okay, and we sort of lift the leg up and we lean back as best as we can to try and balance out the torso and the leg between each other. So working with a belt is good, but try not to let the shoulders creep into the ears. You want to keep drawing those arm bones back, shoulder blades flat to the back, almost like you are trying to pull yourself up by moving the back body through the front body. If you're able to, you can also grab onto the foot and extend the foot straight up, flattening the bottom of the foot to an imaginary wall in front of you there. And same thing here, getting the shoulders away from the ears. And you can push down a little bit with your bent leg, pushing that foot down onto the floor to kind of activate the grounded leg and get a bit more support there. And draw that sternum up and the back body in. So thinking about lengthening up. And of course, you don't actually have to practice with the block. If you're able to sit on the floor and keep your hips relatively stable, so both buttocks are grounded down on the floor, then you can always kind of practice in this way. So those are your different options and variations depending on what your body is able to do at this point. Then we bend the leg slightly, the lifted leg slightly, and we bring it down onto the floor. So we can also work here. If we're on a block, we can also still reach forward towards that front foot, and we can also still use, obviously using a belt. So once you come down, you'd wrap your hands into the belt, pull those shoulder blades back, getting a nice straight back, and then slowly think about coming forward and down to grab onto that front foot. If you're able to reach the front foot, that's all good, but then start to work on some of those adjustments of really kind of moving the back body in to lengthen yourself forward, and keeping that front body open so the back remains relatively straight as we begin to come down. If your front body is open and you're extending down towards your front leg, you can start to take your elbows out to the side, and then again find neutral back of the neck while extending the undercarriage of the body forward. Okay, you can engage your extended legs thigh muscle to help you open up the hamstring a little bit more, and if you can, try and soften the calf by half pointing, half flexing the toe to try and get your extended legs back of the knee down onto the floor, making sure that you're not rolling to one or the other side based on the kind of subtle imbalance in this posture. Okay, then we'll inhale, come up, and we'll take the leg forward. So if you're sitting on a block, you would take the right leg forward and then slide the block over to the middle, bring the left leg in, slide the block over to the right, extend the right leg out and take the left foot and tuck that next to the side body, kind of getting the calf out of the way as need be. So the block is really there to make sure that our hips remain stabilized, sort of squared off, should I say. So as before, if you can keep your bent legs foot out to the side, you can sit down onto the floor and both of your buttocks can more or less be grounded down onto the floor. Then you can practice that way. Then we take our strap again as need be, so you can lean back, bending the front knee, placing the strap onto the foot and lifting the leg up to come into your Kranchasana. Okay, so balancing the weight of the torso and the leg equally as best as possible. Remember, no shoulders into the ears, pulling with the upper back muscles. So this is nice usage of the belt because it does train us for when we have the flexibility to reach the foot, to have those nice strong engagement in the back body. And if you're able to, of course, you can hold the the foot with your hands. The kneecap is awake and strong, and this grounded leg, we're still pushing down a little bit to try and kind of rolling it. The tendency is for it to want to roll in, so we push down onto the foot to get it to subtly roll out and help us to root down the left buttock toward the floor as we lift up that right leg, shoulders away from the ears. You can lift the sternum up and then find neutral back of the neck and really try and point this foot to flatten it to an imaginary wall in front of you. All right, and then we come out by bending the knee. We lower that extended leg to the floor. Same thing here. You can work with your strap first to make sure that we're not rounding the back to try and get towards the foot. The strap teaching us to lift and open the front body and getting that lower back in, extending up. So instead of thinking about these props as crutches, we can see them as teaching aids or ways to help us to maintain alignment, and still work within our capacity. And if you're able to reach towards that front foot, all good. Just make sure once again you get a lengthening through the front body, getting that dorsal spine in slightly, extending forward, squaring yourself off as best you can, so not falling over towards your extended leg, which is the tendency, and pushing the bent legs foot slightly down will actually help you to extend forward and down towards that front leg. Keep the lower back coming into the posture as we extend forward and down. Find neutral back of the neck and breathe. So use the inhale to extend the body, exhale to soften. The extended legs thigh muscle on top is engaged to send a signal via the spine to relax the hamstring muscle, and then the foot we can half point, half flex to soften that calf and flatten this knee a bit more down to the floor. Okay, and then we come up, bringing the knee in and extending both legs out, and we'll do a seated twist, so bringing the right knee up toward the chest, taking the right leg over the left leg. If you're able to keep both buttocks on the floor while tucking the left heel next to the right hip, by all means do so. If your right hip lifts up, however, rather keep that bottom leg, that left leg straight. So either or, you practice kind of what is most sort of honestly grounding for you. Grabbing around the front shin with the left hand, right hand back behind us. We're going to pull ourselves up towards our legs, take an inhale breath here, and then exhale, slowly start to twist towards the right. So the rooting down of the right buttock is a large part of getting the maximum amount of leverage or openness into this hip, while at the same time stabilizing the vertebra on the lower back, so that they are twisting in a healthy way as opposed to a shearing action, which might result if you are kind of not grounded equally on both buttocks. Inhale, lift yourself up. Exhale, twist a little bit deeper. And then when you get to your maximum, close your eyes. Breathe into the crown of the head to lengthen the spine up a bit more. And exhale, allow yourself to twist deeper through a kind of surrender or releasing into the posture rather than force. So we use the musculature to establish alignment, so then we have this safety or security of alignment that we can relax into. And then dropping the chin to the chest, turning to face towards the front. We untie the bottom leg first, or if it's already straight, it's fine. Then we extend the right leg out, and we'll go the other side now. So bringing the left leg in, taking the left leg over, and your option again is to tuck that right leg next to your left hip. Remember, we're not sitting on the heel. The buttocks are down on the floor, and the heel is sitting onto the outside. Make sure both of your buttocks are in contact with the floor. We're grabbing around the front of the shin with the right hand, left hand back behind you. We inhale, lift up, take a deep inhale to lift up towards the legs, and then we exhale, twist towards the left. So same thing here, the rooting of the left buttock down, really important to helping to emphasize or increase the efficacy of the stretch into that hip and buttock area. Lifting up out of the waist on the inhale breath, exhale, twisting a little bit deeper. And then when you get to your maximum, close your eyes, breathe into the crown of the head, and try to release tension from the body as you twist a bit deeper. Really finding the efficacy of surrender, the importance of being able to intentionally release tension that is not necessary to helping you deepen the pose. So initially sounds sort of counterintuitive, but you can actually feel that you can twist deeper through relaxation into the posture. Then dropping the chin to the chest to interface towards the front. We'll extend both legs out, and we'll do a full forward fold, full Paschimottanasana now, to just release the whole body out and to get a nice extension through the whole western side of the body, as they say, the posterior side of the body. So we'll draw the flesh of the buttocks out. We'll take our belt onto our feet, wrapping the hands into the belt, holding onto the belt and pulling ourselves up nice and tall and straight, reaching the inside edges of the feet forward, taking the outside edges of the feet backward, just so that the feet flatten to an imaginary wall in front of us. We can also roll those inner thighs down slightly. You have the kneecaps pointing up toward the ceiling. Inhale, lift up, flattening the shoulder blades to the back. And then we exhale, slowly extend forward and down. And as you're able to, you can release and grab onto those feet, onto your feet, but try and get that lower back in and extending the undercarriage of the body forward. We lengthen forward and down. So looking slightly ahead of you helps us to extend and lengthen the front part of the body, and then try and bring your head to neutral without letting the sternum fall back down. Soften the calves as best as you can and try and flatten the knees down toward the floor. Keep the thigh muscles engaged. Lengthen forward and down. And continue to breathe. If you're holding onto the feet, you can slowly start to take the elbows out to the side to extend yourself even further forward into the posture. Keep the legs awake to assist you. Shoulders away from the ears. Alright, and that's Paschimottanasana, so you should feel a nice extension through not only the back of the legs but also the back body, the spine, all the muscles along the vertebra. Then we'll inhale, come up, releasing the belt, and we'll make our way into our Shavasana. So shifting your weight forward, or sort of shimmying forward towards the bottom edge of the mat. Make sure you've got enough space to lie back down. We're going to hug our knees to our chest. Drawing the knees into the chest helps to release the spine a little bit and also create length in the lower back while getting the buttocks out of the way, so to speak, before we come into our Shavasana. So you can vacillate a little bit from side to side, forward and backward, whatever works for you, just to get a bit of a release here. And then we'll release 1 foot at a time while keeping the knees bent, 1 foot at a time down onto the floor. And then extend 1 leg at a time along the floor with the feet a little bit wider than hip distance apart, pushing into the elbows, tucking the shoulder blades behind us, and taking the arms down alongside the body with the palms facing up. A little bit of an elongation in the back of the neck and eyes closed. So allow the body to completely relax now. Noticing any tension in the eyes, releasing tension in the micro muscles of the eyes by letting the eyes almost soften away from the eyelids, dropping the jaw slightly to feel relaxation spreading from the softening of the muscles of the jaw into the side of the face, the temples, the cheeks, the ears. Release tension in the forehead. Release tension in the scalp. So you can use the breath to breathe into any of these areas that I mentioned. And as you exhale, release tension there. Release tension down the back of the neck, the sides of the neck and the throat, the chest, rising and falling, and we can use that rising and falling of the chest to release tension down the front body on the exhale breath. We can use the rising of the shoulders on the inhale breath to bring attention there, and then exhale, release tension down the shoulders, through the arms, the palms, the hands and the fingers. The back of the head and the majority of the spine resting on the floor should enable you to relax the neck, upper back and spinal muscles. Releasing any contraction there that might be inhibiting the nerve conduction from the spine into the rest of the body. Releasing tension in the rib cage, the lower back, the hips and the buttock. Releasing tension in the pelvic bowl. Making sure the legs have rolled out with the feet flopping out to the side so that the thigh muscles can relax. The knees, calves, shins, feet and toes can relax. Any discomfort in the body, notice a involuntary attempt to tighten, to protect or sort of mitigate that discomfort, and see if you can breathe into those areas and just let go of the spasming, the tightening that wants to like a reactionary approach to that discomfort in the body, and see if the softening into it can release a little bit more of the discomfort than than the tightening and the attempt to stabilize or hold the discomfort. So if you feel really relaxed and at ease, you're welcome to stay here for a little bit longer. I'll gently transition out without disturbing that equilibrium in the body and mind. Just realizing that you can keep the body relaxed, you can keep the mind relaxed, while still starting to move, starting to reawaken the body. So just allow the attention to come back into the body through a slightly deeper inhale breath. Breathing into the arms, the legs, the torso and the head, all resting on the floor. And then bring one hand at a time to rest on the abdomen. Becoming aware of the rise and fall of the breath underneath the hands. Take a deep inhale into the belly, into the hands. And as you exhale, sigh it out. And then we're going to bend the knees and we're going to roll over onto our right side into a fetal position. Supporting the head with the right hand, drawing the knees and chin to the chest to round the spine slightly. Eyes can remain closed. Body calm, mind relaxed. And then we're going to take our left hand to the floor in front of our face and push ourselves up into a seated posture. Keeping the eyes closed if possible. So as you come into your seated posture, just feel the residual effects of the practice, the balancing effect of the practice, so bringing alertness and an awakeness to the body and mind, but also a bit of grounding and relaxation to the body and mind. So that balance between those two things, bringing us into an awakened state that is not tight, it's not rigid. And then we'll bring our hands in front of our heart in prayer position, raising the hands up between the eyebrows and back down to the heart. Namaste. Om Bolo Satguru Bhagavan Ki. Thank you.